Authors Press.
Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. And on the line with us today, we have John M. Regan. We'll be discussing his fantastic book, Let's See What's Under There, a child's colorful guide to the fascinating world just under your feet and within arm's reach. But if you guys want to get everything that Jack has to offer, do yourself a favor and go directly to his personal site, northwestwildlifeonline.com. There, not only will you find more information on Jack himself, find more information on this book, as well as find hyperlinks set up to take you to the purchasing page. So one more time, that's northwestwildlifeonline.com. And I will say, Jack was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by some of the best movers in the business, Authors Press Publishing. So if you have a book that you'd like moved, do yourself a favor and contact Authors Press. You can find out more information on them at authorspress.com. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Jack, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you for being a guest. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm very well. Hope you're doing fine, too.
Very well. Very well. Thank you very much for that. And listen, Jack, I know we have so much information to cover, but let's hold off slightly before jumping into the book. Start by articulating to our listening audience a little bit more about yourself, please.
As I state on my website, I'm probably a guy who's come full circle. I started off just a wildlife fanatic. I loved animals just from birth. Went on, began work. I worked for Jack Hanna for a while. Worked with elephants there in Florida. And then, things come up, go through life, school, joined the Army, and spent a career in the Army and retired from the Army. But while in the Army, I was also doing some zoo work and wildlife examinations as well and observations. And then come all the way, retired, and now I'm here in Washington State and pretty much doing the same thing. I'm still doing some defense work. However, I am just a fanatic about photography now that digital photography has taken over and made life much easier for photographers and much easier to get a picture of something and to study it and to go deep into that. And that pretty much led me into this book.
Thank you very much for articulating that, Jack. And first and foremost, thank you for your service and doing all that you can to protect us here in the country. We truly appreciate having you on and for everything that you've been able to do. Now, without further ado, Jack, let's see what's under there. Tell us a little bit more about your book.
Yes.
Please.
Okay. The book is primarily, it's designed, when I wrote it first, and which each one of the pictures that I took and a description of the picture in that, eventually it came to me, wow, there's a lot of things out there. So I started the book and wrote it that way. And most scientific books, very zoological scientific books, are very good. They give you a brief description, behavior, and things like that. I wrote it in a more personal way. It's a little more humorous in the writing. And then when I was done, it looked like not only it's good for younger children to read, but also for parents and grandparents to share with their kids and grandkids, because they can then take them out in the backyard and go on a wildlife adventure right there. It's just amazing the things that you can find if you just look a little bit closer. You could look at a little flower and turn it over, and all of a sudden, a crab spider comes out. You didn't know it was there. Okay? Salamanders, little frogs, in many different places. And that's really what inspired this book, and that's what's in there.
Clearly, this is something, as you stated, you've come full circle with, right? I mean, you grew up with a fascination for wildlife. So it's clear why you found this particular topic of discussion of interest. Now, why didn't it just end as something that you wanted to do for yourself and like a little journal that you kept in terms of the wildlife that was around you? but you took it a step further and you put it out for the public to partake in as well, and primarily for children to partake in. Why was it important for you to do that?
Another thing that I was always born to do is to write. I have written a couple of other books as well, short fiction and nonfiction. I wrote Reptiles and Amphibians of Afghanistan. It's much more of a feeling of completion once you've done that and you have a record of it, and then you can share it with people. That's it. It's just a feeling of achievement as well. And it's hard to stop once you have that in your heart. You want to write. It's hard to stop doing that.
Absolutely. Well, in terms of writing, since you've always had an interest in doing it, are there any particular artists or people that inspired you?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there are so many. It would be, oh boy, we could go on forever if I had the list of the books that I have read. Robert E. Lee, when he first did his first reptile books that I got when I was in kindergarten, was my first definite inspiration. But there are just so many, numerous others. Some of the ones right now that I think people would really like. The Soul of an Octopus. And that is because it just goes in it's kind of similar to what I'm doing. Just say, hey, here's something right in your backyard you need to know about. Soul of an Octopus, right? And find the author. Hey. But anyways, she describes very much things about octopuses that make them seem like your pet dog. What? Things you didn't know were there. That's the kind of thing, that I want to do. Cy Montgomery is the author of that book. Right?
Perfect.
And then, proof, there is The Earth Moved, Amy Stewart. It's about worms. He goes into worms in a way that, wow, I didn't know such a thing was there. That's why I wrote this book, mainly because, those were inspirations as well. Just so people would look in their backyard and the same thing, oh, I didn't know it was there. I didn't know little sow-bugs and, roly-polies and sow-bugs were actually crustaceans that had adaptive gills. Huh? And that's in my backyard? Crustaceans? Yes, they are there. That's the kind of thing.
Fascinating.
Right.
Fascinating. Guys, again, here on the line with John M. Regan. We're discussing his fantastic book, Let's See What's Under There. A child's colorful guide to the fascinating world just under your feet and within arm's reach. Available for purchase directly through his personal site, northwestwildlifeonline.com. Talk to our listening audience about the research that you did in preparation for this book.
The research has kind of been a lifetime thing. Particularly, I'm a guy, I love bugs. So I will constantly, I have field guides for insects and spiders, many of those things as well. My bookshelves are loaded with them. Then, the amazing thing is you go out and you'll take a picture and you look at it, especially with a macro lens. What is this? And then you try and find it, and you search. You have to search over and over again many times, because as things are different, whether they're, depending on the male or female bug or whatever it is, the colors are different, the posture is different. So you have to go and dig deep and to study those things. So mainly there's Nat Geographic has field guides, and those kind of things are what is in there. Okay, that's the research that I've done to get here. Mainly, a lot of the research was done as well afterwards. Once I had taken all these photographs, after I take a photograph of anything, I go and it ends up with pictures and a little paragraph on my website to describe it. So I go into there and do that kind of thing. And the research that I've done for the book, the main references are also in the book as well. For the hard copy books, Rupert and Barnes, excuse me, 6th edition Invertebrate Zoology. National Wildlife Federation, Field Guide to Insects and Spiders of North America. Audubon Society, Field Guide to North American Insects and Spiders. Hey. Then John Acorn and Ian Sheldon came up with Bugs of Washington and Oregon, very good. And the National Audubon Society, Field Guide to Reptiles and Amphibians, of course. Hey. Then Western Reptiles and Amphibians, called the Peterson Field Guide. And Amphibians of North America, Obert M. Smith. Then Mammals of North America, Peterson Field Guide. That's not recent, that's from 2006, but it was still very good. Then you have Walker's Mammals of the World. Okay. And then here's an interesting one, because I wrote one chapter in there. At the end, of course, I start with the mammals and work down size-wise for the most part. But then one of the last chapter is there's non-animal things to see in there that people could be interested in. If you were looking under logs and doing those kind of things, and sooner or later you're going to run into some fun with fungi. So I wrote about mushrooms. Orson K. Miller wrote Mushrooms of North America. Extremely good book. Okay? And one of the best books is called For Love of Insects by a man named Thomas Eisner. He drills into those much deeper than just about any book I've ever read in insects. Okay? So that's, for the most part, that's it. Right? Those are the main things that I've looked, that I've backed up the research on this book. But if I could remember every book I've ever read, oh my God, it would take forever.
So clearly Jack knows his stuff. I mean, there's no getting around it. This man knows his stuff. That is fantastic. So you know it's coming from a great place. Jack, curiosity for myself. Now, again, this is something that you have put in years of dedication to. What would you say was the most interesting, or maybe your favorite insect or animal that you discovered?
Oh, one of the things is called, one of the more interesting ones that I know about. Everybody knows insects. Everybody knows centipedes, millipedes, things, the arthropods that are there. But there's an insect called a diplurian. And when you look at a diplurian, first you see it, oh, it looks like a centipede. Take the picture, do some research. No, it's not a centipede. It's not a centipede, and it is not a larvae of a beetle. It is an actual insect, and that's as big as it gets, although it just has 6 legs, so you know it's not a centipede, all right? But it doesn't go from there up into a beetle. Maybe about 1 inch long, but here it was, my backyard. I discovered something I had never seen before. That's the kind of thing right there that really, really fascinates me. All right? To discover a new species. Now, I say new species meaning something I haven't seen before, not necessarily a brand new species, but to discover something that I've never seen before. Oh, I love it. When you move to an area such as the Northwest, I love salamanders as well, and we have plenty of them up here. I found all those things right on my property, pretty much right in my own backyard.
Incredible.
Excuse me. And so that's the main thing. Anything I haven't actually seen before. And there is one called the mountain beaver. Not a beaver. It's a rodent, fairly large rodent, but it's one of the most ancient rodents in the world. Mainly it lives right here in the Pacific Northwest, just about only in the Pacific Northwest. Because it is so ancient, its physiology requires dampness to keep its liver moving, things like that. But one of the things, one day, it just popped out in my backyard. There it was, and I was able to get pictures of it. Not a very uncommon animal, but it's very uncommon for that to happen. That's the kind of thing that really fascinates me, really gets me going.
Jack, what I love so much about what you're saying, and really the closest resemblance that I would have to it, one of my older brothers is fascinated with the ocean, right? And it really kind of connects to what you're saying. I mean, of course, with what you're talking about is you don't have to travel anywhere. Literally, these things are in your backyard. And that's what's really fascinating about it. It's right there. You don't have to go anywhere. But really about the fascination with just the unknown is something that I think is very enticing. And again, the connection that I made when I first started doing research on your book, preparing for this interview, it instantly resonated with one of my older brothers who's fascinated with the ocean and how little we know about it. So when these new...
Oh, that's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When these new animals come out and you discover them, it's insane because, again, there's so much about I think the saying is we know more about space than we know about our own ocean, or, something along those lines. And it's absolutely fascinating to me what is still out there that is yet to be discovered. And that's why your book is so powerful. And it's such a great ride for these children to take, or for parents to take with their children. So I absolutely love it. Jack, as we start to tie up this wonderful interview, I would be doing my listening audience a huge disservice if I didn't ask this next question. Now,
okay.
Being an artist myself, I love having this platform to be able to pay it forward, in a sense, to other artists that are out there listening in. Now, as you stated, this is not your only book, so writing has always been an interest of yours, and you have other books in which you've published as well. So you are an accomplished author. You've been through the process of writing your narrative, as well as the gauntlet, the battle that is publishing in and of itself, because we know anybody that's written a book knows that publishing the book is probably just as tedious and just as much work as writing it itself, right?
Definitely.
Jack, talk to our listening audience. For any new writers that are out there listening in, what advice, what words of wisdom would you be able to relate to them?
Do the best you can, but make sure that you have an editor. Because when you write, it looks very much, very, very normal and very right to you. There are different ways. When you look at it in an expanded print, an expanded format, oh my God, I made that mistake? How could I be so stupid? It's surprising. And having an editor, someone who really understands what they're doing, professional editor, will find a bunch of mistakes in there that otherwise would just go on. That to me is the most important thing, is editing. Marketing and, sending it out to publishers and those things, go ahead and do that. But do some research online with the people who are experts in those things, and they will tell you the self-publishing way, that's the quickest way to get your book out to the public. Go to a traditional publisher, you may get in there, but that will it takes longer to do that. Right? Bottom line though, edit. Make sure that you get your book edited. Okay?
Absolutely.
That would be my main thing. And also, if you're just writing something that is just literature, that is much easier. When you have photographs in there, such as I do in this book, is loaded with photographs I've taken, getting the right megabytes in there and the right editing for that photograph is extremely important. And that can be difficult because after it's written, then you put the description of the picture underneath it. Well, the format of the book that you have to put it, if you're going to self-publish it, that could mess that up. Okay? Especially when it comes out in ebook format. That's why I think the hardcover book of this is so much better.
Absolutely. Great.
Much more lined up.
Great point, Jack. Listen, guys, as I stated, there's so much that goes into it, right? A lot of times I think from an outside perspective, at least from my perspective, prior to, establishing people of distinction and working, with authors, I had a very common misconception where it's like, yeah, you write the book and then you just find a publisher, it gets put out and easy peasy, right? It's all set. There's so much more that goes into it. Great words of advice that Jack just provided. And, Jack, we've covered so much information. Is there any pieces of information that either, A, you want to reiterate to just re-implement for our listening audience, or anything maybe that we haven't discussed that you want to let them know of before we end this interview?
Thank you. And one thing I'd really want to stress at the end with this particular book are the photographs that are in there. I've taken every one of them, and they are macro photos and large photos, and they really illustrate the animals that I have seen. Every time you turn a page, bam, a new one shows up. It could be a snail staring at you. It could be a rabbit, right? It could be some animal you've never seen before. But the presentations that I have done with those things, children have loved them, just everybody, because a new one shows up. And that makes the book very readable for parents and grandparents to sit down and share with their children as well. 8.5 by 11 inches. It's a large book, and I think they will like it very much. One thing here, there's 3 ways if you want to go out and look for wildlife. Stumble upon, it pops up unexpectedly in front of you. There's sit and wait. You go somewhere and just sit there. Eventually something will show up. Or there's the creep and peek. That's what I do. I creep along and turn over logs, turn things over. You never know what's under there. Hey.
You know, guys, listen, what I love so much is there's still so much that we haven't discussed. There's still so much to be discovered. And unfortunately, we're out of time, but now the onus is on you. You know what you got to do. NorthwestWildlifeOnline.com. Let's See What's Under There is the title you have to get. And John M. Regan is the author that brought it to your table. You surely will not be disappointed. Fun-filled ride for you to take with your children, with your family, with your grandchildren. But an even better gift for you to get for someone else's. So you know what you have to do. Let's grow, let's develop, let's educate ourselves. And it starts with this fantastic narrative. Jack, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you once again for being a guest with us today on People of Distinction.
Oh, and thank you very much for having me. It's been fun.